You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Do us a favor, like, subscribe, comment on the video, subscribe to the podcast on whatever audio podcast you're listening to, and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but it helps keep all of this free. If you want more, join the Insiders program on the subtext link down below. No trolls, 14-day free trial, and the easiest way ever to cancel. So give it a try. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, is available to you. Listen, this, I don't want to say resurgence by the Ole Miss Rebels because they're just getting better. From the Georgia State game to now, it's like night and day already. And a lot of that has to do with the development of Cam Franklin and Will Echoles on the defensive line. Will Echoles was an absolute monster. And think about this. You're playing against the LSU Tigers, okay, who spent $18 million on a transfer portal roster to make them explosive, with a quarterback that was the only quarterback in the nation returning that threw for over 4,000 yards this year. And you knew going into the game, because if I knew, they knew, and that's the way that works. I don't have any like inside crazy information that the football coaches don't get, but if LSU was able to run the ball, that offense could get unlocked. They would be problematic, all of that stuff. And Ole Miss having the confidence to run a 3-man defensive line for the whole game. There was no running them out of it. LSU ran for 57 yards. It was 3-man rush the entire game. And the 3 different defensive linemen was Xavier Harris, Cam Franklin, and William Echoles. And early in the year, the only player on the defensive line that was really flashing was Xavier Harris. And we talked about him having an all-SEC level fall camp going through, and he was going to show out immediately, and he did. But Will Echoles won the starting job at the 3 technique position, and Cam Franklin won the job in the position that Jared Ivey played a year ago. I knew it was going to take a little bit of time because you have to adjust to the speed of the game and all of that, and especially playing non-conference games. Georgia State can be difficult. You have Tulane, and then all of a sudden LSU. By LSU, you want to be situated. When you looked up going into this LSU game, Ole Miss was ranked somewhere around 16th in the SEC in rush defense, and that is mainly because of explosive plays that were given up against Georgia State and against Kentucky and against Arkansas, like the one play against Arkansas where it just weren't lined up. I understand that it was about explosive plays. When it was coming to running, it wasn't the other team was just running it down your throat. It was because you were making explosive errors. And a lot of that probably happened and dealt with the newness of that group. Listen, as they get more and more comfortable, they're going to be fine. And this is now going in when I go to Athens. It'll be their 4th SEC road game for the defensive line. And the defense gets better each and every game. Pretty much the halftime point of the Arkansas game was the point they started getting better and getting legitimately better. And all of a sudden, people in the secondary started making plays. Like Wydett Williams has an interception and a fumble recovery so far in the last 3 games or so. And I was curious to see exactly how it would go. Because if you can remember the 2023 Georgia game, Ole Miss went into that game having a pretty explosive defense. Their ability to get to the quarterback with J.J. Pegues and Jared Ivey and those dudes, they were able to force pressure over the course of the whole season. This was the team that completely shut down Penn State in the Peach Bowl, and it was also the core that they brought Walter Nolan and Princely Mamiellan and Trey Amos and those guys into. So this year, everybody thought it was going to be a step back. Well, if you didn't think it was going to be a step back, I mean, you haven't really necessarily been paying attention. But The replacements and the reason it was going to be a step back was not because the talent disparity from one to the next. That's the thing. Everybody said Ole Miss went 9-3 a year ago, and they have to take a step back after you lose that much talent. So they automatically marked it at 7-5 or 8-4 as a step back. And I was like, no, that was a 12-0 team. So a step back could be 10-2. It could be a better record and take a step back. And at the beginning of the year, all of these young players that were lining up on the defensive line and at linebacker and all of that, they were having growing pains. They were having struggles. And Cam Franklin was there, who he has like 14 pressures, quarterback pressures at this point. One of the leaders in the NCAA, and he hasn't gotten home yet. He will. Just the laws of averages says that he will. And Will Echoles, who had that pretty awesome sack against LSU on Saturday. Those two players started developing exponentially from game to game to the point where against LSU, they were a problem. They were a problem every single snap. And let's not act like LSU doesn't have dudes, okay? They have trouble running the ball. That could be schematic, but LSU lost some one-on-ones. And the people that they brought in, they were highly ranked people that they brought in that have played a lot of football. And they got absolutely whipped by these two young boys from the state of Mississippi that basically alternated the number one player in the state of Mississippi. So it is interesting to see how quickly they're developing. And there's 3 weeks to go. They're going to cut back practice time this week. They do that every bye week, give them a little bit of break, save some legs, all of that stuff. Get some people healthy, like Caden Lee, who caught a touchdown pass after the fact, but he hurt his arm a little bit on that fumble earlier in the game. So this gives him a chance to get healthy. This Ole Miss team should be very interesting. And if you look at the conversation changing that we talked about in the first segment, this is another part of it. As they get better and better, people are going to be surprised because they either held last year against Ole Miss in this year's rankings, which there are several so-called journalists that did that, held the 9-3 season against them because they went out on a limb and said they were going to win the national championship and they failed, and all of a sudden somebody has to pay for that. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't work like that. And there's been quite a few wait and see people, but the perfect storm in this game and this team and this whole narrative around Ole Miss. We talk about them becoming part of the national conversation. We talk about the young players developing. You add that with the emergence of Trinidad Chambliss at quarterback, which the whole country loves that story. The D2 quarterback to SEC quarterback, 5th in the Heisman ranking, all of that stuff. That's big. And the Lane Kiffin documentary. This is a guy that was a complete villain. And he probably still is in Tennessee, but he was a complete villain that somehow they're doing a redemption arc on this character. And you can see the thoughtfulness. You can see all of that stuff out there. You can tell by the way he coaches that he's changed a little bit. So we'll see. This Ole Miss rise, or where they want to be, whatever you want to call it, is largely due to the development of Will Echoles and Cam Franklin. If that continues, because they are nowhere near their ceiling. Will Echoles has a Walter Nolan level ceiling. Okay. So once they get there, once they play a lot of football, once they do all that, he has a chance to be really special. Cam Franklin, you see number 5 out there, it just reminds you of Robert Kimdichie. And you can line up and play a true 3-man front from time to time like you did against LSU and have a 340-pound end and a 290-pound end and Will Echoles taking up the center. I think that's what's interesting. That allows you to do some certain movements because of the size and athleticism of the defensive lineman. Anyway, Let's take a quick break real quick. In our final segment, Ole Miss just locked in a 4-star commitment. Meet the newest Rebel recruit and find out exactly what that means for the team going forward next. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss. If you don't believe me, Google Ole Miss Podcast and see how much we come up. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it is completely free. Your support means the world to us. It's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV are presenting College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. I've been on a couple times this year. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Hotty toddy, everybody. Remember, analytics are just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.